Ordinance amending section 1560322 related to rental code definitions. First reading. The purpose of the rental code enforcement is to protect and promote the health, safety, and welfare of those persons renting residential property as well as the general public. This was to be accomplished by establishing reasonable minimum requirements for rental property within the city limits. Since the passing of the rental code, Chapter 156, on May 18th, 2015, and the registration deadline on December 31st, 2015, the City of Perry has a total of 951 rental units registered. During the registration process, multiple owners have filed an application for exemptions stating reasons why their property would not qualify as a rental unit as defined in Chapter 152. The Board of Appeals met on February 18th, 2016 to hear the first two applicants state why their property should not be classified as a rental unit. Both applications cited that a relative occupied the unit. The Board of Appeals granted one request and tabled the other until further information could be presented. The Board then discussed the definition of a rental unit and unanimously voted that the definition should be redefined by the Council due to the current definition is too vague to properly identify rental properties. The Board of Appeals suggested the term owner-occupied be used to help identify a rental unit. The City Council Public Safety Standing Committees met and discussed the recommendations from the Board of Appeals and have agreed with their suggestion to change the definition of a rental unit to read as follows. Rental unit means any building or portion thereof that contains living facilities including provisions for sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation as required by this code and is not owner-occupied.
I move that we amend Ordinance 156.0322 to read rental unit means any building or portion thereof that contains living facilities, including provisions for sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation as required by this code and is not owner-occupied.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Yes. I realize I'm a minority opinion here, but I'd like to express it at least. Let me say I support the rental code as a landlord. I helped put together, I voted for it when the council approved it, so no problem there. I had my rental units, 3 of them inspected in the last couple of weeks, and there was really no problems, so that's not an issue either. But I have a problem with the expanded definition, if you will. I have a problem with when somebody, buys a house for grandma or mom to live in, calling it a rental, making them pay $25, even though it's not much money, but for me it's more the principle. But calling that a rental unit when my mom lives in the house, if that's the case, or some, other cities, and probably not limited to, but at least including Ames, Norwalk, Clive, and Des Moines, allow first-degree relatives to live there. So that's, they're fairly large cities, much larger than we are, and they seem to be able to accommodate that. I'm not sure why we can't accommodate that. That's kind of my thoughts. I just think we ought to limit that to first-degree relatives, not make it expanded where my 6th cousin once removed lives in my house and that's no longer a rental. But if my mother, my son, my first-degree relatives, I don't feel like that should be a rental. To me, a rental house, rental tools, rental anything is something you typically get money for. If not money, you get some kind of other gain. Maybe they're paying utilities, or you get a tax deduction, or you're getting some kind of financial benefit. But again, if the person's not getting any financial benefit and a first-degree relative lives there, I just have a problem with that. Enough said. Thank you.
I have an opinion on this whole topic as well. First of all, I know there's other cities that have a definition that's similar to this.
Yes, there are.
So it's not, you presented some that do have, there's plenty of others that don't. And I think the Board of Appeals was absolutely right to send this back to the council for clarification. I know when this came about that the purpose of it was to make sure that all the rental facilities in our community were safe and good places for people to live. We didn't make a definition on whether or not, you're collecting rent for it. If you're not living in it, it's a rental facility. If somebody not related to you weren't living there, you would be renting it to somebody. So it's a rental facility. But my issue is more with how this came about. And Councilman Andorf, I like you, but I don't like how you handled this whole situation. I think as public servants, we owe our community an absolute, without question, good example for them to follow. And the example you set was absolutely wrong. It just was. You were here when we first talked about this. You were one of the architects of this ordinance. Secondly, when it came to council, you never raised this issue once. Never once did I ever hear this issue come up. Then, instead of, if you did have an issue with it after the fees were sent out for inspection, and rightfully so according to the ordinance, you should have gone to City Administrator Peterson and said, Sven, I have a problem with this. I think we need to bring this to the council and clarify it. That would have been being a team player. I think that's what the public expects from us. Right now, in our society, there's all kinds of distrust for public servants, whether you're talking the national level, the state level, or the local level. And when we don't act as a team, it just furthers that opinion. And as I said, you're a likable guy, but I just disagree with you totally on how you handled it. What you did, you went to the Board of Appeals, and you were the very first person to appeal your own ordinance. And furthermore, you brought up the fact that you were a city councilman at least 4 times in your presentation, which meant, hey, I'm trying to influence this Board of Appeals because I'm a city councilman. Anytime that we put ourselves as public servants in the public eye as we are entitled because of our positions, then that's wrong. We are here to serve the public, and we are not entitled to anything. This is an honor to be a servant for the public, and that's how we should look at it. And what you did was just flat out wrong, and you'll never convince me that I'm not right.
First of all, I feel like I need to respond. I did not expect or ask for any special treatment. Let me back up, I'm sorry. You're right, I was part of the architect, to use your words, and those are correct. I was part of the person who helped put this together. Mr. Tibbles can agree, I think, that I brought this up more than once when we were putting the ordinance together. I brought it up several times to him. We agreed upon a definition that, talked about the monetary thing, so I thought it was settled. I was surprised. I didn't take this to the appeal board. I was told I had to take it to the appeal board. I never planned to take it to the appeal board.
Why didn't you take it to the city administrator Pearson?
Because I thought Steve was administrating this
No,
particular.
Sven has authority over everything. He has authority over every staff person, over every ordinance, over everything. He's our city administrator.
But I was, because of the ordinance and the way it was worded, I was surprised, disappointed, and upset that I had to take it to the appeal board. I was told that that's the way it was.
Well, why did you even feel like you had to take it to the appeal board?
I didn't feel like I had to.
Yeah, you did. You felt like you had to because you showed up and you presented it, and you mentioned that you were a city councilman at least 4 times during the presentation. To me, that is saying, hey, I'm special, you need to do that. In fact, the Board of Appeals granted your request, and they tabled everybody else's. Now, I think what you ought to do, you ought to go back and pay the stinking $25 and just be done with this, because it set a dang poor example for the rest of the public to follow. And if I sound upset, it's because I'm upset.
You and I are going to have to agree or disagree. It's not $25 that the definition of rental, which I'm going to quit here in a minute. I think we probably both need to quit. I voted my concern when we were putting the policy together, or the ordinance, excuse me, and I thought it was settled at that time, but I found out later when I was told I had to appeal it that it obviously wasn't. So I'm going to quit there. Thank you.
Well, I think if you had a problem with it, you should have brought it to the council. That's where it rightfully should have been discussed.
Next time I will, Mr. Brown. Thank you. Good advice. Thank you.
I'm done.
Thank you. For a moment, I felt like I was at one of the national debates a little bit there, gentlemen.
Sorry, I lost my cool.
Yeah. But I think you both have good points. And I will say this, and I've been thanking everybody else tonight. The people that serve on this council, it's a thankless job. And there are a lot of things that come before us that we may not agree on, even around this table. And one of the greatest things about this particular council, I believe, is that we're progressive in it, and we always get to where we need to go. And tonight will be, I'm sure, no reception. Although in this instance, it sounds though that at least one individual around the table might be a little bit disappointed with the outcome of this vote.
Well, we disagree, and we can disagree, but my point is that as public servants, we need to be a team, we need to act as a team, and that means we bring it to this. Transparency in public service is absolutely a necessity, and when it's not done that way, then that's where mistrust comes from the public. That's my whole point. We should be a team.
Point taken. Anything else? Any other comments? Please call the roll.
McCall.
Yes.
Wallen.
Yes.
Andrew. In the interest of being a team player, yes.
Berkman.
Yes.
Thank you. And that concludes our meeting at 7:06. A lot of ground in a short time. Thank you.
Yes.